Very good afternoon to you. There is no denying that the coronavirus that has already affected hundreds of thousands of people has had a global impact, particularly a negative one. And it is just a question of time before it boils down to the economy of our country, affecting obviously the poorer and the most vulnerable. We are, as the Eastern Cape, boasting huge economic returns in terms of the automotive industry, with Port Elizabeth being home to some of the biggest companies like Volkswagen, Isuzu, and so forth. But right now we speak to Professor Hendrik Lloyd to tell us more about how this might affect our industry, especially automotive. A very good afternoon to you, sir.
Afternoon, Nanda. So, yes, about the auto industry specifically, we must just place it kind of into context to say that this coronavirus is one of the most unknown and unprecedented events that has hit the world and the global economy in a long time. And of course, if we focus specifically on the automotive industry, we know that the automotive industry has become a global industry, a global in the sense of its supply chains, its value chains, and also where the different parts are made across the world. It will affect the production in the different countries depending on where the coronavirus have had the biggest impact. Now, of course, South Africa is also part of that automotive value chain, and specifically Port Elizabeth. And at some point in time, we will definitely have an impact feel the impact of the virus on the industry as such.
And can we maybe dwell more on the imports and exports, because we do understand that with this industry there's a lot of those. How do you see it affecting us in that regard?
So, of course, the virus will have a disruptive effect on the value chains and how imports and exports happen. We've seen, for example, the value of the rand tumbling against the major currencies, and according to normal economic theory, you should say that should be promoting your exports. But of course, we all know that if there's a disruption across the world in the global supply chains, that it will not actually be beneficial at all, just the contrary. And we, of course, all know that China and other European countries like Germany are our main trading partners, specifically also in the automotive industry. And that in itself becomes a disruptive factor for us in South Africa.
And just in your opinion, do you then think that South Africa might find itself, especially companies, in a position where they have to change the way of business in terms of the trade?
I think we are already there in terms of how we think about the trade and the change thereof. I think what the coronavirus did for us is just to make us think more quicker about change, and also more focused, so that we can adapt easier in the future and be more proactively geared towards such changes going into the future. Of course, you speak about the automotive industry. We must never forget that the tourism industry. The tourism industry is also a very important industry for us, even down here in the Eastern Cape. And we must also consider the impact that virus will have on international traveling. And if you talk about impact on the vulnerable communities and the poorer communities, remember the tourism industry employs a vast amount of people, skilled and unskilled. And by not having international travelers, that will impact every household, from the person that will provide the domestic service in a bed and breakfast, all the way through to the food and beverage section and the restaurants in your major hotels and so on. So the impact of the coronavirus goes way beyond just traditional manufacturing. It also impacts the services industries in particular.
Thank you so much, Professor. That was Professor Hendrik Lloyd giving us a view on how he personally thinks that the coronavirus is bound to impact South Africa, our country, taking it down to, your ordinary citizens like you and me, and how they are likely to be affected by this virus. But for now, it's from me, Anna Nonji, and Natasha Nokondolu. Back to you in studio.